Okay, so I know, Hartosh, I want to come back to the point of there's so many more journalists, so the possibility of dissent or just the two stories that toppled the first domino in this entire case that went up in the Supreme Court were done by outfits that are small. But before that, coming to the physical, intimidation that is there in Pakistan is not here. I just had a little joke for because you guys are in Sonipat and it's in Haryana, so I'm hoping you have some sort of a course where you are sent out to. There's this joke of this Nawab from Lucknow comes to Haryana and he wants to board a bus and he says he wanted to ask the guy what bus should I board. So he asked the judge standing there, भाई साहब आपको थोड़ी तकलीफ देनी थी तो इसे देखे तो दिखा. So what I'm saying is that since these young people will be trained from here and will go out and face the world, you really think like hundreds of them can be intimidated?
Your optimism
Is it infectious?
not infectious at all, it just amazes me, that's but
Yeah, we should just
so I have to sort of start where Kanak ended, and I think unfortunately India, both those possibilities are absolutely missing. Radio, no government has ever allowed to get into the hands of the public for the very reason it's so effective in. I think we must be one of the few functional democracies where radio is controlled in this fashion, because that really is democratization of news in a way no other medium has managed, which is why we are never getting free radio in this country. It's not in the interest of anybody. The second is the vernaculars. I have pretty good experience of having lived for 6-7 years and reported from a state that lies between Sonipat and Pakistan, Punjab, which has all the attitudes that you describe, where the media, the vernacular was controlled far more easily than what has happened in Delhi. I have good experience of the Hindi belt media, having lived in Madhya Pradesh, reported in India, control of the vernaculars and that ability to resist is even weaker than the ability of English media to resist. So I think we have to look for different alternatives in a way. It is the expansion of the small pockets of dissent that already exist in the English media, finding linkages with vernaculars, expanding out of here rather than hoping that solutions will come from the ground up. It is not going to happen in my experience. So we have to find ways in which we can reach out, do more of what we are doing. And in this...
Suggest a few things that you think these can be done, I mean, at an institutional level, as individuals?
It is simply this, when I say the threat of the right-wing growth, we have the differences between authoritarianism and liberalism. You could have right-wing liberalism, we have a right-wing authoritarian climate. When you keep talking of the difference between 84 and 2002 in public perception, it is not the difference of electronic media, however much we like to believe that. It was primarily because 84 was notionally a liberal crime. Congress did it. And so in our memory, Girilal Jain was not forced to write those editorials. There was a lot of complicity of the media in that. Unlike 2002 when the media was opposed. We have, since the coming of Modi, seen a transformation where the Modi is becoming more representative of the country. We are getting editors, leaders, owners who represent this right-wing authoritarian view of thinking. The media always stood aside from this till this point of time. It may not have been representative, but it was far more combative, even though it was controlled even under Congress. This is the tendency we have to resist. For this, how is it to be done? One is question of, as you said, if the public itself is not willing to fund and support media that will become pockets of dissent, nothing else is possible. We have to start from that. In that, the trust that we manage to earn with stories that we are doing have to be the beginning of expansion through public funds. And then reaching out, the wire has gone into Hindi and Urdu. All our lawyer stories we've translated into Hindi. We know what the impact it has. We need the ability to expand and grow in this direction while retaining what has left us independent, because the danger of expansion is to fall into exactly the traps that every large media house in this country possesses.
So, while the subject is media under trial, I think it's a good time also to speak about, since Hartosh mentioned radios, you're all journalism students, there's a very interesting paper of how radio was used as a tool In Rwanda, there were Hutus and Tutsis clash, and it's scary when you see the kind of language, the kind of messaging that went out, and it is remarkable the similarity to the kind of words that we used and the kind of messaging that went out then to some what television channels are doing now. Now, while we can choose to believe that many of these people are doing it because of pressure, I do believe many of them are doing it because they believe their own nonsense. Yeah. Right. So now it's not just media taking on, state institutions. It is media taking on media. How does that battle play out across the world, Ayush? Do you have any experiences on that?
I mean, media taking on media, honestly, my attention and energies are focused more on India, so I'm not best placed to answer that question. What I will say is, in terms of solutions, I think one of the things we at CPJ have constantly heard is that if there was an organization like CPJ in India, it would go a long way in preventing attacks and harassment of journalists. And our response always has been that if such an organization were to exist, Indian journalists themselves should come together and create it. We've seen examples across the world. Kanak mentioned Pakistan. The Pakistani press associations really hit back at the government, and they do it because they are united, and they do it because they know that if they don't stay united, they will not be able to exercise the kind of influence that they do. In India, we have organizations like the Editors Guild, like the Press Council, like the News Broadcaster Association, but frankly, they are all spineless. None of them have any power to do anything. So, journalists have to come together and create this advocacy group which will battle for them, which will fight cases on their behalf, which will really make a huge noise whenever any journalist comes under attack or whenever free speech comes under threat.
Pamela, on media taking on media, but I just want to point out, while sure, Pakistani journalism and journalists really hit back against the government, more brutally than us. In fact, their satire, and I consume a lot of their satire online, is brutal. It is only directed towards politicians. No one has the guts to go against the military. So I think it's where they derive the power from. So they will not take on the uniform like they'll take on Nawaz Sharif and Bhutto, who they slap around easily. So but yeah, on media taking on media, while such bodies are great, we have seen cases where media houses have actually instigated violence against young students. So that solution of a media body, to me, doesn't quite seem realistic.
No, you ask us to think about possible solutions. I don't think there's any one pat solution or addressing this problem. But I think there are a combination of things that can be thought of, and we may see incipient sort of trends that may indicate as much. I think, for instance, this calling out of fake news is an important, it's very limited, but organizations like All News and so on are important in the sense that they are trying to show that there is such a thing as credible information. The point is, over the last few years, I would say particularly the last 4 years, we have even lost the ability to make the difference between authentic news and fake news. So you see, and there's a collapsing in this fake news of hate speech as well. So we are seeing a kind of very confused picture when it comes to information flows, and we need a critical engagement with this. Now, the critical engagement can come through agencies like this. It can come through institutions of knowledge creation, like the university where we are sitting. Unfortunately, the attacks on universities, the public university, I've just been part of a long process of talking to people representing both staff and students of public universities across the country. And the story there is so frightening and so sad, because you're saying the shrinking of space that we are talking about in the media is happening perhaps even at a more accelerated pace at the university level. So knowledge creation and critical engagement with the ideas of politics, after all everything is politics, critical engagement is so important, and I think that process, re-establishing that process of critical engagement with our contemporary realities, I think is a very, very important thing. So I think we need actually institutions to come together. And I think, for instance, this angle in a small way is indicative of the potential of bringing institutions together. The media, universities, think tanks, people where knowledge, in places where knowledge is created, trade unions, very important, forgotten in this whole. They are the ones who actually articulated, interests of so many. I mean, the fact that journalism lost its trade unions, I think, is a very important marker of its lack of interest in the people who make journalism.
Kanak, again, on the media versus media picture, is the media in Nepal, do they stick together for basic journalistic values, or do you have, the pro-Maoist and the anti-Maoist media, and how do they react to each other? Is there this vehemence in discrediting the other?
I think civil society people discredit each other more than the media practitioners do. And yes, there are pro-Maoist media, pro-Nepali Congress media, pro-UML media. But when there comes to an existential point where you need to unite, they do. I give you examples. When the Maoist war, so to speak, was at its height, media did come together to be able to support each other as the reporting terrain became very difficult. But more clearly it was seen when Gyanendra, when he was still king, took over. There was a coming together. When this gentleman named Lokman Singh Karki, as I told you about, when he decided to come down heavy against the media, they did come together. So when the blockade that was done by India, which is not reported as such in the Indian media, in 2015, when the blockade happened, the media actually came together to be able to have a kind of platform, not in any way in terms of managed news. But what I realized, to answer your question more directly, is that yes, they do come together when there is an existential threat. And I think India is probably moving, or if it has not already, towards that existential threat in terms of media freedom. So I would suggest that media needs to get it started, because earlier Pamela was talking about the trade unions, not just the trade unions of media, but trade unions in general are weakened in India as elsewhere in South Asia. Let's think about, I remember in the 70s and 80s, always one used to look at the vanguards of human rights in South Asia would be the PUCLs, the Civil Liberty Unions of India, would be the vanguards. I don't hear of them anymore. So we need to find a way in which this weakening of civil society that is happening all over, and as I see in India as well, has to be addressed. And who will show the way? It has to be media. And I think there is 2 points I just want to make very quickly. I was calling my colleague Anohita Majumdar, who's editor of Himal South Asian, out of Colombo now, and she pretty much agreed with what I told her I was going to share here. But she added one point which might give us also a sense of hope. She was saying that there are now inside media, formal media, outside, freelance journalists. There are more outlier journalists than there were during the time that she was reporting out of Kashmir and out of Punjab and elsewhere. She's saying that when she was covering Kashmir and in any way challenging the Indian state's version of events, she was together with no more than 2 or 3 journalists. There was no camaraderie because there was no community. She says now there is a community of outlier journalists, so then that may then feed into what previous panelists were saying. That is the way to go, that you enlarge that circle of outlier journalists, and if media shows the way, then I think the rest of civil society will also get energized. But again, I want to repeat, it won't happen if we don't go vernacular, if we do not take the ideas that are there for the taking in the English language media, if we don't take that into Hindi, Urdu, Assamia, Bengali, whatever.
Okay, just one quick intervention and then we'll take questions, so keep yours ready.
No, I was very interested in putting to you this whole what happened after the murder of Gauri Lankesh. Now that murder itself was reflective of what Ayush is talking about, of the insecurity with which journalists function in today's India. But what was very, very thrilling, in fact, was the response to it and the coming together of many people across the board. And if you look at Gauri's own evolution as a news person, it was when she started writing in Kannada, that she made the difference. And that's when people wanted to kill her. If she had continued, and she was a very privileged journalist, she started with the Sunday magazine and wrote very, very well considered stories, but no one would have killed her if she had continued like that. So that stepping out into the danger zone of getting to the skin of people, getting under the skin of civil society, I think that was very interesting. So when her death occurred, when her assassination occurred, people across the board, of course we had the trolls responding and we know how ugly that was, but that was just a handful when you consider the numbers that turned up in support of the idea of Gauri Lankesh.
Alright, questions for the young lady here, and then we'll come down here and then to the journalist, the lady up there, please.
My question is that these days we are seeing a trend of how media houses are supporting political parties through their news coverage and their stories. So, what impact does this have on the credibility of the media, because they are wrecking the very foundation on which they are created, that is an unbiased opinion, and what impact will this have on the media in the future?
Okay, if anyone wants to take that, but
Look, I think the question itself is a corollary to what we were discussing. What has happened is that we tend to use the term media uncritically. That term itself has dissolved. We talked 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could have media aligned with political ideas, ideologies or parties. But when there was a journalistic threat, the media would pull together. Today, what has happened to the idea of what we call media is that the affiliations are more important than the idea of journalism. That is, for Republic, and I'll take names, it is more important to be aligned with the BJP and the interests of the BJP than to worry about what happens to journalism or journalists. If journalists get beaten up in the interests of the BJP, Republic will support it. And this is a step up from what the Congress did. The Congress used media, but this is now a new level. And this has reached across to all media, where they are not primarily media or journalistic outfits. Their interests are political. They are political outfits masquerading as media. So that credibility of media is already dissolved because of the structures that have been formed. In that sense, I remember when the CPJ people came. In India, the CPJ line itself, the theoretical line, is a disaster. CPJ says that the owners are free to set their agendas for their organizations in India. If that is what we go by, journalistic freedom would not exist here. We need journalists to be protected from owners and insulated even ideologically before we can get free press.
sure. Does anyone want to take that quickly so we can take as many questions as possible? You want to take something? Okay. The lady here, yeah.
Neha Ghosh, I'm from Jindal School of Journalism and Communications. We have been talking about how we need to get under the skin to people and how we need to dissent courageously to put forward the views. But as Mr. Dixit said that there's radical populism when it comes to social media, there's self-censorship. How as media persons should we address that?
Who would like to take that? Anyone?
One is to not to read the mail, and the other is to block. Block with aplomb, right? With panache. No problem there at all. But I think what we fail to realize is that there is some lack of online education that starts with Hillary Clinton, with her servers, to each of us. That we are all over the world, we're in the first generation of users. And some of us are a little slow at this, some of us are fast in the way we move our fingers. But other than that, we're all in the same boat. And we don't understand, and maybe now, people are beginning to understand just about now with all the Facebook imbroglio, that the memory stays. So whatever you tweet right now, or it stays within your record. So in fact, the US Embassy now, when they check your application, they ask for your social media accounts so they can go through your history. That is indication. So we have to, because half of the trolls and half of the people who are doing this radical populist writings don't even know that they'll be held to account sometime down the line if they get up to being anything at all. So I feel that firstly that in the natural cycle of things, the first hijack has been by, in my view, the right wing and the ultra populists. But that will change. The other forces will also come to have as much of a say. Because the rest of us these days, as I said earlier, we use it for communication and information. However, we can't wait for that to happen. We have to be proactive in informing the public the nature of social media so that there will be some kind of a controlling mechanism there. But one thing I did want to make point I wanted to make earlier, online is not enough to organize. I'm a civil rights activist in Kathmandu, in Nepal as well, realizing that online is only for information in that sense. If you want to push back, you have to face, you have to have face-to-face, you have to have demonstrations, you have to have people on the street with banners. It doesn't work to only rely on social media. I don't think I entirely answered your question, so I passed the mic.
Just a quick response to it. Yeah, you have to get under the skin of other people while reporting, but today I think as a journalist you have to have a thick skin. On the other hand, there are various strategies. I don't block. You should, I think, revel in what comes your way online. If you are doing something right, you are going to get a lot more of it. Don't take it personally. Have a thick skin, and you will have to wade in as a journalist if you are in a public platform. There's no getting away from it. That's the only thing that I can.
Samrat, I can take that question, but if anybody else wants to. I think this is, it's economics. Basically, log अच्छे बुरे नहीं होते, हालात अच्छे बुरे होते हैं. If you have 1,000 crores at stake, your ability to pick a battle where everything could collapse is a lot less than if you just have a few crores at stake. It is a pure economic decision, and I don't think it's to do with good people and bad people, because professions are the same across the board. And we trash Republic and Times. Channel I worked for, NDTV, was soft on the previous government. It has been reported on the financial kind of bailout they got from ICICI. It is purely economic decision. Hartosh already shaking his head in disagreement, so I'd like to hear what he says. But I can tell from my point of view, it's not like we're doing some cracker stories like them because they have very experienced journalists. But if, I want to provoke someone, if anything falls flat, I can go back to make a highway map page. Everyone can get a job. I don't, the whole, something that's been built over years doesn't collapse. I think that's it. Hartosh, I'd like to hear what you say.
Before Hartosh comes in, I'd like to say something. I agree that there's a lot at stake, these empires that are built. But what were these empires built for? And that's a question we should ask organizations like the Times of India and Hindustan Times and so on. Hindustan Times had this wonderful hate tracker, and they pushed it down, they took it off the pages. Why? Because they wanted Narendra Modi as their chief guest for one of their do's. Now this is a new trend, by the way, of big organizations building on their social capital by throwing these huge, international events, actually. And in order to get the main players on board, they are willing to compromise their journalism. So basically, Bobby Ghosh, I believe, left because of this, although we don't have any evidence of it because he himself hasn't opened his mouth on it. But he was fired. He didn't explain why he was fired, so one doesn't know what secret conversations happened in the back room, But the fact is that these are institutions that are supposed to be for people, supposed to be for you and me. What business have they to sell our interests in this manner? So it's a need to question, and I think why Wire and Caravan and all keep going is because, and News Laundry, because people are inspired by that idea of keeping credible journalism afloat, and they're willing to put their last buck on it and even be, face all kinds of problems as a consequence.
Hartosh?
For once, I think what Abhinandan has said is part of the answer, so there is some semblance of agreement there. It is, and you know that, Samrat, you work in senior positions for big organizations. When I talk about the superstructure of the media, that has far greater ability to have leverage on large organizations than small. But that said, it's not also true that all small organizations in the country are doing independent journalism. The numbers you can count are 2 or 3. You also have to create a culture where that happens. It is once you create that culture and you can keep free of that superstructure that you end up attracting people who are going to do that kind of thing wherever they were. This is a place of last resort. I don't know who else will ever give me a job after this. So it is a coming together of many things that actually creates that. But the finances and the superstructure make it possible. So then ultimately that question of resistance, dissent, growth comes back to us. I am suggesting that we have to expand out. How do we expand out in a fashion that they remain immune from all the pressures and the problems that come with that expansion is the real challenge. I haven't come across an organization that solved it yet. It's also true, I mean, if you look from the post-liberalization era of why media is founded, not one new media house has been a profit-making entity. So media is being founded for influence peddling for other business purposes. That is literally the case. This is true of even organizations like Outlook and see where they've got open, etc. It just is not a viable function in this environment, so some other interests have to drive it.
Exactly, I was just coming to that. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but this is very fundamental to journalism. The business model and the economic model actually determines a lot of the direction of where it goes. So, like look at something like Reliance. They have, in one quarter their profit could be a couple of thousand crores. What interest would they have in buying in media output that's like 300 crores? So the purpose of much of media in India is not for its own sake, it's not for journalism per se. It is the marketing arm of your mining, refinery or any other business. And in marketing, if you're going to spend 400 crores, you spend on a television channel. So that's how it actually works. And when the fundamental model changes of how media finances itself for its own sake, I think a lot of this could be corrected. Yeah, any other questions? We have one up there. Yeah.
Arvind Kumar, I'm a student from the same school. So far we've been talking about right-wing governments having the ability to influence. So the question that I have is that we've seen that different parties like the AAP and the Congress also have been using social media. So what is the right-wing government's voice even more vocal? And what is stopping the other parties from actually voicing their voice effectively? That's my question.
Views to dominate social media, and in the case of India, it happens to be right-wing majoritarianism, and that is what is driving it. It doesn't mean that every society has only right-wing, because in Nepal, you had to deal with radical left capture for a while of social media as well, and some of that very fashionable ultra-progressivism, as I call it, continues till today. So I don't think it's only all over only a right-wing thing, but in the case of India, it does seem to me for an outsider to be a right-wing phenomenon more than an ultra-left phenomenon.
If you look at the kind of I think, is the question. And if you look at the kind of money, we all know that the BJP, for instance, has been able to, in the last 1 year, grown by 80% almost in terms of actual income. Now, what does that say? It shows tremendous financial capital that is riding behind the message. So their messaging is also money fuel. Don't forget that, the way they've been able to permeate through the RSS and the other networks, but putting technological tools in the hands of all these cadres is what has really made a difference. Tripura, for instance, the person who was sent in, an RSS cadre man, was sent in as a kind of, to set up systems, as it were, before the election. And he was a wonderful user of social media and digital photography and so on. So I'm saying that there is a coming together of money and technology in some of these trends that we see and cannot explain through rational discussion.
Time for one question, and I'll just tell you, you should check out this Pew Research. Just the nature of ideology is such. They actually, it's a very nice graph. It's a diagram which tells you how much people who consider themselves liberals and those who consider conservatives, how they consume media. Conservatives tend to consume less diverse media. They get their source from one or two, whereas liberals consume diverse media. So therefore, the rate at which a particular news spreads within conservative circles is far more than in liberal circles. So that's why it works. Even it's on Pew. You can check out their website. Yes.
I wonder if I could ask a question, two questions, quick questions of the audience. As academics, we are subjected to what I learned yesterday is called TLFQ. And everybody know what that is? I didn't. It stands for Teacher Learning Feedback Questionnaire. And I was slapped on the wrist for asking that question and not knowing the answer. So I want to ask the question first before I say any more, and I don't have much to say, to the audience, the students. First of all, show of hands. How many students read the newspapers, online or offline, more than 3 times a week? Honest answers, please. Okay, well that's very encouraging. Of course we've got a bias survey here, the selection bias, as we call it. Second of all, how many of you listen to the radio for more than 3 hours a week? Right. As I suspected, not quite so important. Maybe the radio you listen to is music and not serious commentary as well. I don't know. But yeah, I'm concerned a little bit about, no offense, and none of you are in my school because I don't have any students yet, but what I would call the selfie generation, taking pictures of themselves for a large part of the day, and the others, which tend to be dominated by boys who play smartphone shoot-'em-up games during lunchtime and have very little interaction. To me, as nearly 70 years of age in July, I'm rather disappointed with the drive, with the idealism of, let's say, somewhere between my son and my grandson's generation, meaning yours. So I think, we have to pay a lot of, we've heard a lot from the supply side, from journalists, from the different kind of media and media issues that you face with the law, with government, with the financial self-interested parties and so forth. But one of the major obstacles to progress, and that's what we're looking for, and we're talking about journalism tomorrow, you're the future. We're talking about, this is global university, G is our middle name. Much of the discussion this morning has been frankly very Indo-centric, ethnocentric, rather than geocentric, apart from the inputs on India from Nepal. But we need to think about the future generation of your customers, how to appeal without pandering, how to express views, how to encourage, how to educate, quite honestly, our current hopes for the future, to show an interest, to take action, to become involved in the way many of us were in the 60s. I don't want to be so much of a throwback, but those are the points I just wanted to make. Sorry.
Thank you. Kish, we have time for one or that's it?
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a brief question.
Okay, quick one. You got it.
There's definitely the aggregation of voter information, and it's interesting that in 2019 we're going to have the first millennial generation voting, people who turn 18 and can therefore vote. And many parties, the BJP specifically, has been actually looking at how to draw them in. And so there's a lot of youth-centric activity in their electioneering. That happened last time. I don't know if you recall the selfie booths and so on that were set up in 2014. They're all indicative of the need to draw in this new cohort. So that's one. The other, of course, is this number crunching that we are hearing of. And you mentioned that we are India-centric, but actually this is a model that is international. We saw it with Trump. Obama's election is supposed to be the first major international election that used 16 major social media platforms. So it is a model that has been sort of seamlessly adapted to various situations. And so when we speak of India, we are also speaking in some ways about other parts of the world. I know it also is a complicated question, but I hope I just touched on one aspect.
That's it for now. Thank you, panel. Kish, you may take it from here, please.
Thanks so much, Abhinandan, and thanks the audience for staying on, the journalism students, and like I mentioned, that to have full-time journalists take their time out for the day and come out here speak to you, it's actually quite a big deal, which means that it's the right time to discuss this. We need to rally around. We need to find answers, these self-doubt, these challenges. And this is the time. If we don't do it now, it's probably going to be too late. Again, mementos that the students decided that they wanted to give you books, and of course randomly there's not name written on the books, and pen, which is the university pen, and for the panelists and the participants. And this conference really has been put together by the students of the journalism school. They only hired me to coordinate this. And don't just applaud. Also, like borrowing Abhinandan's fake phrase that Aristotle said, plug it. Please do visit News Laundry, subscribe it. If you want good news, then you got to pay for it. Go to Wire. Go to Caravan, visit CPJ, and also go to Himal South Asian. Read these articles, go to them. That is how we are going to be able to appreciate it. It's just not good enough to clap and go home. Go back, the students, to your global mess, have your food. Come back, we resume our next session at 2:30, so be here at 2:15. And the panelists and the other guests, let's proceed for lunch. Thank you so much.